Hello again. At the end of the last video, after the rape of Dinah, the slaughtering of her tribe's men, the enslavement of the women and children, and the looting of the town, God tells Jacob to run away in case the other local tribes become restless. Why God didn't simply smite all the other tribes, leaving the land he had promised to Jacob ready for occupation, we're not told. God does like to smite, but he also enjoys pain and anguish, and a long drawn-out campaign of annexation is sure to provide plenty of that, where a quick smiting never could. I more than alluded to the idea that the story around the rape of Dinah might be etiological rather than intending to portray any historical events, that it might be explaining the history of the tribes in the region and perhaps their struggle for power. More weight is given to this idea when we continue with Genesis at the end of chapter 35. After Jacob has run away, God appears to him again and tells him that his name will now be Israel again, and that he will be the leader of a great nation again, and that all the land that was promised to Abraham and Isaac is now promised to him again. Either God has Alzheimer's, or he thinks Jacob has, or perhaps the writers of the Torah just wanted to hammer home the fact that these stories give them the right to live in the land. As Jacob, now Israel, I'll keep calling him Jacob as the King James almost always does, just because God gives you a new name, there's no reason why anyone else should bother using it. So Jacob runs away, and en route Rachel gives birth to Benjamin and dies in childbirth because God wanted her to. I was listening to a comedian the other night taking the piss out of superhero films and questioning why, if Superman is of such pure spirit and filled with a desire to help humans, does he spend 40 hours a week sat behind a desk in a newspaper office, ignoring the thousands of cries for help being continually picked up by his super-powered hearing? How many people die because Superman wants to hold down a 9-to-5 job? Of course, God doesn't even have the excuse of wanting to fit in or be liked. Israel, that King James remembers to call Jacob Israel a couple of times, finally settles down beyond the Tower of Edar. We don't know where that was. And it came to pass, when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. This little incident is never mentioned again, and we are left to wonder. But if we read ahead to Samuel 16:21, where Absalom is usurping David's kingdom, we have, "And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, Go in unto thy father's concubines, which he hath left to keep the house, and all Israel shall hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall the hands of all that are with thee be strong." And so perhaps this earlier action of Reuben's was an attempt, as the oldest son, to usurp his father's place as head of the tribes, or etiologically the tribe of Reuben making a grab for power over the other tribes of the Hebrews. Whatever happened, Reuben did not succeed Jacob, and his tribe's role going forward is less than you might think for that of the eldest son of God's chosen man. Chapter 35 ends with Jacob's family tree, a list of his 12 sons, the eponyms of the 12 tribes of Israel. And then Jacob dies at the biblically young age of 180. Chapter 36 details the genealogy of Esau, or Edom. Esau is the eponym of the Edomites, and the chapter continues with a list of the rulers of Edom. Chapter 37 is a step back in time. Jacob's alive and well, and the story of Joseph begins. And everyone knows the story of Joseph. Never mind the detail, look at the shiny coat. Well, let us consider some detail. God decides that he wants the Jews to spend 400 years in slavery. So God gives Jacob's son Joseph the power of precognition. So much for free will. Joseph's brothers don't much like being told that they will all bow down to him, and so, just as God planned, they duff him up, throw him into a pit, and then sell him into slavery. And that's how it happened. The 11 brothers of Joseph, knowing that their father had been chosen by God and was on naked man wrestling terms with him, knowing that God knew their every thought and deed, were somehow dumb enough to think that they could get away with ostracizing their brother, selling him for 20 pieces of silver, and lying to Dad about it. And Jacob rent his clothes, and put sackcloth upon his loins, and mourned for his son many days. And God? What matters if his chosen man spends years in mourning over the death of his favourite son? What would you think of someone who played that kind of dirty trick on you? What would you think of someone who engineered an entire nation into slavery for generations to no useful purpose? I'd think they were a sociopath. In chapter 38, we leave Joseph languishing in Egypt and return to catch up with Judah's family. Now Judah has 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. No explanation here whatsoever. God ignoring free will again, and stepping in to actually kill someone in their prime. What is it that did that was so bad? It was obviously worse than anything Stalin, Hitler, or Pol Pot ever did, because they were all allowed to live and thrive. They do say that to is human, but be careful, because God just might not like it. With dead, Judah tells his younger brother Onan to take over the bedroom duties with widow Tamar. You'll notice that Tamar is not included in any discussion. Now Onan decides he does not want to be a surrogate father for his dead brother, and opts to give Tamar some jewelry instead. But the pearl necklace outrages God, and he kills Onan as well. What do we take from this? Kill a few million Jews? God's fine with that. Depopulate your country? God's fine with that. But spoil a money shot, and you can expect instant smitation. So Judah decides that God is trying to send him a message by quickly erasing his heirs. And so rather than risk his one remaining son, tells Tamar she must remain a widow. Or perhaps Shelah simply wasn't into girls. Well, Tamar decides that she is going to get pregnant, widow or not, and so disguises herself as a whore. God's fine with that. And Judah, her father-in-law, then pays her for sex, and God's fine with that. Tamar falls pregnant, and surprise, surprise, it's twins again. And it came to pass, when she travailed, that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that, behold, his brother came out. And she said, How hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother, that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. These bastard sons of a tryst between a whore and her father-in-law become the progenitors of the 2 great tribes of Judah. Zerah, or Zerah, would become head of the Simeonites, who rose to prominence in Judah before fading. Pharez, or Perez line, would be traced through King David all the way to Jesus. We could therefore view the story of their births as yet another etiological myth, explaining the wax and wane of tribal fortunes as Judah grew to prominence in the region. Or it could be the absolute accurate historical truth. Next time it's back to see what Joseph is up to in Egypt. Thanks as always for watching.